Welcome to this explainer. We're diving straight into one of the most bizarre, yet entirely true stories in military history. I mean, imagine, if you will, one of the world's strongest militaries deciding to go to war. But they aren't fighting another country, they aren't fighting human insurgents. No, they are going to war against thousands of giant, flightless birds.
So, what actually happens when an army fights birds? It sounds like the setup to a punchline, right? There were no tanks facing enemy soldiers here, no fighter planes up in the sky, just trained soldiers aiming heavy machine guns at birds. And the unbelievable twist to the story we're about to uncover? The birds actually won.
Part 1. Meet the unusual enemy, Australia's giant native bird. Before we get into the actual battles, we really need to understand exactly what the Australian military was up against. The emu is Australia's largest native bird, and it's the second largest bird in the entire world, right behind the ostrich. We're talking about a creature that can grow to be nearly 2 meters or roughly 6.5 feet tall. But despite their massive size and being completely flightless, emus are incredibly strong, highly intelligent, and they can run at absolutely blazing speeds, up to 50 kilometers or 31 miles per hour. Every single year, huge groups of these emus migrate across Australia searching for food and water. Usually, this is just a beautiful act of nature causing very little trouble. But as you'll see, in 1932, everything changed.
Moving on to part 2, Veterans and the Bird Invasion, a post-war struggle.
To understand why a modern military got involved with wildlife management in the first place, we have to look at the mounting challenges faced by farmers in Western Australia during this specific time period. After the First World War, the Australian government rewarded thousands of returning veterans with farmland. These guys hoped to build peaceful new lives growing wheat. But the land was terribly dry and the rainfall was completely unpredictable. Then, the Great Depression hits, bringing severe economic hardship. And just when you think these veterans couldn't possibly face any more adversity, an unexpected threat arrives in 1932 in the form of 20,000 hungry, migrating emus looking for an easy meal. And the devastation wasn't just about the birds eating all the crops. The emus' massive size meant they literally smashed right through the protective wooden fences surrounding the farms. This created huge gaps, which then allowed thousands of rabbits to pour into the fields and cause even more devastation. The farmers watched months of exhausting hard work completely disappear. Desperate and facing total ruin, these veteran farmers begged the government for help. Which brings us to part 3. The military steps in. Major Meredith's mission. Government officials really weren't sure what to do about a plague of giant birds. But finally, in November 1932, they made a truly extraordinary decision. They sent in the military. On Side A, you had the Australian military, equipped with 2 Lewis machine guns and thousands of rounds of heavy ammunition. On Side B, 20,000 emus, armed only with their speed, their intelligence, and their sheer numbers. The military and the public fully expected a quick and easy victory. I mean, after all, how difficult could it possibly be to defeat a flock of birds with actual weapons of war? Well, the soldiers were about to find out. Part 4. Battle Tactics and Chaos. The emus fight back. In the very first battle, soldiers confidently spotted a large group of emus, waited patiently until the birds came close, and then opened fire, fully expecting the entire flock to just fall where they stood. But the reality was radically different. Instead of staying together to be easily targeted, the emus deployed shockingly clever tactics. They scattered in every direction. They zigzagged frantically across the fields. They divided into smaller, completely unpredictable groups. Observers even joked that the flock seemed to be guided by watchful leaders. Whenever this leader spotted the soldiers, the entire group would scatter before the heavy machine guns could even be aimed properly. The birds acted just like highly trained military units outmaneuvering their enemy. Within seconds, only a handful of birds were actually hit. Realizing their standard tactics were failing miserably against these incredibly fast birds, the military decided to pivot to, get this, the moving truck strategy. The idea was simple: mount a heavy machine gun on the back of a moving truck and literally chase the birds down while firing. In theory, to the commanders, it sounded absolutely brilliant. It was supposed to match the speed of the birds. In reality, the truck violently bounced across the rough, totally uneven farmland. The poor gunner couldn't aim his weapon at all. Meanwhile, the drivers struggled just to keep the truck steady while trying to keep up with the emus. Remember that 50-kilometer-per-hour speed we talked about earlier? Yeah, the birds simply outran the vehicle. The entire operation descended into frantic chaos and ended as a complete and total disaster. Part 5. Australia concedes defeat. the cost of war. After several exhausting days of fighting, the reality of the situation was becoming pretty much impossible for the military and the government to ignore. Let's look at the expectations versus the reality here. The military had expected the quick elimination of the emus. Instead, a staggeringly low number were actually killed. They expected thousands of bullets to hit their targets, but reality showed thousands of bullets completely wasted in the dirt. And the ultimate goal? The expectation was that the farmers would be saved. The reality was that the emus simply continued their migration completely unharmed, eating whatever they pleased. The results fell incredibly far below the government's expectations. Word of this disaster spread rapidly. Newspapers around the world began making jokes, with headlines literally claiming Australia was losing a war against birds. This wasn't just a local failure anymore, it became international news. Public criticism mounted at home, and the operation was becoming incredibly expensive without actually achieving its goals. Mocked globally and failing miserably locally, the Australian government was finally forced to swallow its pride and call off the mission entirely. Part 6. The Emu War's Legacy: Man versus Nature. Now, technically speaking, no official war was ever declared by a country against these birds. But how did it wrap up? Step 1. The military officially withdraws in total defeat. Step 2. Leaving the emus to go about their business and simply remain on the land. And step 3, without the military, farmers eventually realized that bullets just weren't the answer. They had to rely on building stronger, taller fences and finding alternative, non-lethal methods to protect their crops. Brute force simply didn't work, making the emus the undeniable winners. So if a modern military couldn't defeat a flock of flightless birds, what other forces of nature are we completely underestimating? It's a funny piece of history for sure, but it highlights a really profound lesson. Nature is incredibly difficult to control, even with advanced weapons and trained armies. Sometimes the most unforgettable stories are also the strangest. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it leaves you curious to uncover what other incredible, true stories are hiding in the pages of history. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.